In this amazing video, we will discuss basic navigation of a database and how to figure out where things are. A typical scenario that you will be given in this class is to use a particular database and write a query to extract information from one or more tables. In this example, I have already logged in to our database server using credentials to access the database called Airport 2060. You can find those credentials in your learning management system in the document that I've posted that contains credentials. They will not be given here in the interest of security. You are welcome to follow along with this example. Since I'm already logged in, I have access to the database called Airport 2060, and let's assume that I know very little about this database and I need to be a little bit of a detective to try to figure out where the information is that I need to extract. I know that my data request is list the airport names in alphabetical order. You will always be given a data request. You will always be given a database and associated credentials. From there, it will be up to you to determine what tables need to be accessed, how they need to be joined and filtered and manipulated to create the result set that meet the data request. Looking at the data request, I see specifically a request for airport names, and I immediately notice that in the table tree there is a table called airport. The first thing I'm going to do is expand the columns in that table to see if there is a column called name. I don't see one, but I do see a column called airport, which is probably a pretty safe bet that that is the name of the airport. You can also do a quick check of the data, highly recommended. Select top 1000 rows is usually fairly quick. And in the airport column, I see what appear to be names of airports. So I have some level of confidence that I have found the information that I need to support that data request. If you've made a good faith effort to do some detective work and investigate the schema, the structure of the tables, the data in the tables, and you feel like you're not confident that you have the right information, I encourage you to ask your data expert, ask your domain expert, which in this case is me, or post a question on the course FAQ and someone else will jump in and help you. I don't want you to struggle too long trying to figure out the structure of the database. I want you to make an effort, and 99.9% of the time that effort will be productive and you will get the answers that you seek. But if you are just completely tied up in knots and confused, ask. Don't beat yourself up after you've made a good faith effort to find the information that you need. Another trick in your bag of tricks is to build a database diagram. In SSMS, whoever builds the diagram owns the diagram, which is somewhat frustrating. And what that means is I really can't build one for you and have it persist and be available to everyone, because if I build it, I'm the only one that can see it. But that's okay because you can build one. So click on the database diagrams folder, select New Database Diagram, you are logged in with limited permissions to this database. You may get this warning message. It says you are not logged on as the database owner or system administrator. You might not be able to save changes to tables that you do not own. Certain edits require create table permissions. That's okay. Click the OK button to continue. You will still be able to create the database diagram. A database diagram consists of one or more tables in the database and the relationships that have been defined between those tables. In this class, you will be given relatively simple, well-structured databases, and it will not be difficult to navigate them once you get the hang of the tools that we're using and the terminology that we're using. What I would encourage you to do then is shift-click on the bottom table in the list to select all of the tables, so all the tables will be highlighted. Click Add and sit back in amazement as SSMS builds a database diagram and adds in all of the connections that it knows about between the tables. And this is a good visual tool to get some idea of how the tables are connected. Click Close to close the Add Table dialog. You will see that all of the tables have been added to the diagram, arranged neatly, and connected through relationship lines. So you can see that some tables have relationships to other tables. Now we have another trick up our sleeve for determining relationships. The trick that we have is a well-defined set of naming conventions that make your lives much, much easier. You will not have this in the real world. Databases grow and change and evolve over time. Conventions are not necessarily followed by everyone who has their hands in the database, and it will not always be this easy. But in this class, since we don't have time to study extensively database structures, we build in these naming conventions, and it makes our work much more efficient. And hopefully it will show you that in the real world, when you start doing this kind of work, the importance of conventions in what you do. Therefore, I encourage you to study this, and you will see very quickly how the names of the tables and the names of the columns in the tables will tell you the relationships between the tables. If, for example, in step 6, the primary key of every table is the name of the table followed by the letters ID, and then foreign keys, which define relationships to other tables, are named in a very consistent manner as well. Therefore, take the time to learn this document and apply it to databases as you try to figure out the structure of those databases. Look for this document in your learning management system, download it, and have it available anytime you need to navigate through a new database or create a new database as well. So when you create a database, follow these conventions. Your life will be much easier. When you go to work and you're presented with a very complex database, you will realize the importance of conventions, and hopefully you can influence your peers and try to drift them towards following some conventions as well. In this particular data request that we were given at the beginning of this video, we don't need to join any tables. The airport name is in the airport table. It was pretty easy to find, and we can go from there and write the query to satisfy that data request. If we had needed to join some tables, we can use the naming conventions that I showed you a moment ago, and we can use the database diagram. And those two things together, plus the FAQ and the data domain expert as a last resort, should help you get through writing this query. If you hover over the relationship lines in the database diagram, it should tell you the name of the relationship and the two tables participating in the relationship, which is redundant because you can see that in the diagram. But if you dig down into the design of the table and actually look at the relationship defined in the table design, you can see what the field names are. The lines, unfortunately, don't connect anywhere useful. You can see that this line, which connects to the T airplane airport table, points between two field names, so it doesn't tell you anything. And the other end of that line points to landing fee ID, which has nothing to do with anything in that relationship. It would be really nice if this relationship line pointed to the two fields, the two columns participating in that relationship. But unfortunately, it does not do that. So the line tells you there is a connection between the two tables. It tells you the name of the connection or the relationship, but it does not tell you the columns that are participating in that relationship. However, since we are consistent and faithful in our naming conventions, you can figure that out. For example, we have a field called, or a table called T airplane, and it participates in a relationship with the table called T airplane airport. And we can see in the airplane airport table there is an airplane ID column, and based on our naming conventions, we know that is a foreign key that connects to the primary key in the airplane table. And we're using some key terminology here, foreign keys, primary keys, that you may not have learned about yet, but they will become crucial to you when you start writing views that join tables together. So be sure that at some point, when the topic becomes relevant, you study fiercely the concept of a foreign key, primary key, and the other kinds of keys, because without that knowledge, you cannot implement views and you cannot understand the schema and the structure of the tables in the database.